Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Gavin here with secretsoflongevity.com. I want to talk to you today about the recent news. Just last night, as of the making of this video, there was the announcement that the first GMO babies have been created. I want to apologize in advance if I seem a little lackluster. That was a crazy day in terms of the amount of breaking news that's been going on. I've kind of been keeping up and posting about it on Facebook and Twitter and things and following and just wanting to keep up with it. The major thing that's really probably got me pretty blitzed feeling is the tragic news out of Boston with the bombing at the marathon. And I don't have anything specifically to say on that in this video except that's tragic, and my heart goes out to everyone that has any kind of connection to that area and that event. We had a lot of people from Guelph. Guelph was actually, I don't know if it was recognized or is just seen as perhaps the biggest running hub in all of Canada. You go out any evening into the roads in this sort of small city and you see tons of runners and groups of runners, and it's a very active running hotbed. So my dad's a marathon runner and there's a ton of his friends who were there, and thankfully they were all safe. A bunch of them finished before the blast. One was actually not too far away from getting to the finish line when it happened. He had, I think, just a few kilometers left or a few minutes left before he would have reached the finish, and we're grateful that he is alright. That aside, the other news wasn't as big with the GMO baby thing. That brought up a lot of interesting things that came to mind, and I was talking about it on Facebook, and that spurred me on to make this video. So I'm definitely against GMO anything. While I think there's a place for genetic experimentation and looking into things, I think when it crosses the boundary without sufficient science backing up the safety of it is when it starts becoming a practice. So the fact that there's people actually doing this, and by the way, I'll stick a link below if you want the news article where I read about this. They're creating human life that has been altered as an experiment. These are actual human lives you're playing with, and I just disagree with that completely. That's not what I'm going to be debating in this video, is ethics or pros and cons of this. It should be clear to most of you who follow my channel where I stand on that, and I hope you are similar minded, considering this is more of a holistic health type channel, which tends to differ from the mainstream opinion and embraces a more fractal based biology as opposed to this reductionist thinking that has resulted in areas of research such as GMOs and the acceptance of it when there is evidence that these things aren't healthy. So that got me thinking about, well, what motivates scientists to do this? What is it that's lacking in humanity, in human reproduction, that has people doing this? And it's really clear to me that there's health problems that people have that they want to overcome and they want to prevent in their offspring. That's a totally reasonable desire, and it makes sense. We want to be healthier, we want our children to be healthier. But where I have the issue is when people are looking for the quick fix. So within one generation we want to have perfect health in our children. That's the type of thinking that I label as reductionistic thinking. It's resulted in the pharmaceutical industry, magic bullet pills, or the attempt at creating magic bullet cure-alls or pills. So to me the solution is actually an overhaul on what we already have, which is natural human reproduction. So this again gets into a controversial area, because traditionally the word eugenics has been associated with some very fascist type powers. Obviously the Nazis were using eugenics to try to create a super race. I'm not suggesting anything remotely close to anything fascist, but it's realistic that on an individual level we can start to think, oh hey, if my intention is to create good health in myself, I'm partly doing that because if I've yet to have had kids, ideally my offspring is going to be healthier than my generation or the generation before me was, because I am giving them hardier genetics. And if that mentality is carried on for many generations, you have increase in the fortitude of various Gen X. You can have IQ passed down along genetic lines. So there's a lot of traits that can be sort of cultivated and increased that goes down through the generations. We already do it through when we breed plants. Farmers and plant breeders select desirable traits to create hardier and better plants down the road. Of course, hybridization has a lot of bad connotation because when your motivation is to do something like get a really good flavor, you sacrifice other things at the expense of those qualities. So a wild plant, for instance, wild lettuce is drastically different from supermarket lettuce. Even though at one point that lettuce was as bitter as the wild lettuce, they bred out the bitterness, the medicine, the hardiness, the resistance to foreign invaders that a wild plant has, and you end up with this very coddled, degenerated plant that happens to be very easy to eat, which is why it was created in that way. So with humans, while we're not going to just run out and be in the wild and let the wild take its course and create and shape us in a way, because to survive in the wild, you're going to have to naturally fortify your genetics over the generations. That's just what will come about. We can do our best to mimic that, but we can also say, let's create these better conditions that result in stronger immune systems, stronger physiques, more imperviousness to health, better IQ, and that will, like I've been saying, go down the line. So the problem is when a higher power, meaning the government, takes control of this and tries to dictate it to other people. That's obviously not cool, because if there's any degree of racism in that, you're going to end up with something that's fascist and deplorable and not going to be good for the human race at all. So when we look at the way our culture and society is currently built, it's probably completely unrealistic that there would be any kind of government mandate to have any effect on this. It's hard to know what would work in terms of creating the environment that would encourage people to take up this own idea in their own lifestyle. We can only just talk about it and say, let's do this on our own. When we consider the smartest, healthiest, and as a result, wealthiest people in the world, mostly in developed countries, are having fewer kids than people at the other end of the spectrum who are the sickest, most genetically unhealthy to some degree. That can be argued for different things. We can definitely see that there's a big social problem that needs to be addressed in some way. I'm not suggesting that there should be any kind of suppression of or rights taken away from people who do have lots of kids. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think it's unrealistic that there's any kind of incentive for people who do have good health, good genetics to procreate more than they would otherwise. So it's a pretty complicated issue, but I think just openly talking about it without that fear of it being seen as fascist, because that word eugenics doesn't mean to consciously take over human reproduction in a way that elicits better genetics down the road. That in and of itself sounds good, but as history has shown us, that is connected with some very dark motivations in humans, so it's not something that's acceptable. So at this point in time, it's really something that we can only take on ourselves, and if there's any emergence of any possibility of that on a larger scale and the promotion of it, that might be a good thing. But like I just want to keep emphasizing is that's an extremely fine line as to where that could cross over into something that isn't going to be good. So that's just my thoughts on that. I think the desire to create GMO babies comes from the desire to improve our future generations, and I think that desire might be better coddled if it was thought of in terms of long-term sustainability and done a natural way, as opposed to looking for the quick fix. It's like taking some sort of medication because you have high triglycerides, as opposed to looking at your diet and addressing the diet, because that's the more sustainable long-term fix to that problem of having high triglycerides. Problem with unhealthy genetics, increased cancer risk in your family, bad teeth, low IQ, is to begin fixing that in yourself and create offspring that improve that over time. It's not to genetically modify babies in your womb or in your partner's womb so that they have some sort of weird genetics spliced in there or altered in some way. That's a pretty slippery slope. So let me know what you think about this interesting topic in the comments below. Like, favorite, and share the video if you feel so inclined. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.